On today's Locked On NBA Game Nights, we're going to discuss Evan Mobley going for a career high, the New York Knicks defense looking shaky, and the best game of the night, where Memphis dropped Boston.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Let's get it going on Locked On NBA Game Night. I'm Roland Styles, host of Locked On Thunder. That's Dime Dropper, host of Locked On Clippers, subbing in for Gavin Shaw of Locked On Knicks because we have a deep bench, unlike in Denver here at Locked On. But Dime Dropper, how you feeling today? A fun Saturday of NBA action, really.
Yeah, some really shocking results. Excited to talk about them, excited to join. And it's nice, I am the host of Locked On Clippers, but it's always nice to delve into the other teams in the NBA because I am more of a basketball fan than I even am a Clipper fan. And I'm a big Clipper fan, so.
Love all the basketball stuff you got going on at Dime Dropper on Twitter and, of course, YouTube and, of course, Locked On Clippers as well. We're going to start with the first game of the day. This is kind of the only chronological start for us, but it is worth noting because of Evan Mobley. Otherwise, a sleepy game where the Cavs really controlled the Charlotte Hornets 116-102. But Evan Mobley had 23 points in the first quarter, and he finishes with a career high 41 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 3 blocks. And I think that the NBA as a whole has kind of agreed that the Cavs are now officially in that contender status after starting out the year. Some people tried to poo-poo the start from Cleveland, try to put them in a box, kind of away from the contenders table. But Dime, I think that they got to see at the table here.
Yeah, they have to sit at the table. I'm still a little bit skeptical about, and I like Donovan Mitchell, but I'm still a little skeptical about a guy that's a 6'3" and your number one scorer leading a team to a championship because, as Becky Hammond said last season, she got a lot of criticism for it. It's pretty rare for somebody to lead you, and he's the clear-cut number one option, but I think the improvement of this team that was very slept on by a lot of fans before the season and like media is the development of the two young players that they already have, that they're, top 10 picks, Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, and you're seeing them arguably have career highs. At least Darius Garland efficiency-wise having a career year, and then Evan Mobley career high in points and a career high in this game. I mean, the thing about Mobley for me, and he went to USC, and my dad went there, so I'm a big Evan Mobley fan, is if he can, the three ball was a big thing that I knew that they were going to ask him to shoot more of. Last season, he only shot 1 3 a game. This season, he's at 2 a game and shooting 35%. But to me, with Mobley, it's to be more aggressive as a scorer. And you said 23 points in the first quarter. I mean, we saw a lot of that in this game. But being aggressive as a scorer, like we saw in that Celtics series last year, before obviously Donovan Mitchell got hurt, or even after he got hurt, that's the next step for me, is that aggression as a scorer, especially around the basket, because he's got such long arms. He's got really nice touch around the basket. We know what he can do defensively, but to me, that's the next step in him becoming an all-star, which he might be this year. I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, considering their status, would you put him in the all-star game?
Yeah, considering where they're at as a team, I know that it's an individual situation, but you do see it often be like, oh, is this team good enough for 2 All-Stars? The Cavs certainly will be by the time that you get there. And if Mobley can continue to play at this level, I think that he'll be in his first All-Star game. He went 6 for 8 from 3. And these are the type of games that are like huge and loud in the box score, but they also can trickle into next week and the week after and kind of give you that flip of the switch, like you're talking about, to be more aggressive offensively, to demand the ball more, or just like do more with it once you get the basketball. And because he's so lethal inside with that soft touch, if this gave him the confidence to shoot more than 2 threes a game and actually convert on them, then you have this idealistic unicorn in Evan Mobley, and we know what they have in Jarrett Allen down low. And that's why, yes, I have grave concerns about Garland and Mitchell defending on the perimeter in the playoffs. But if those two guys are on your back lines, it feels pretty good still for Cleveland. I'm very curious to see how this plays out this season with Cleveland and how they go about the postseason, which we're going to get to, of course, way later in the year. But for right now, I think Mobley is playing at an all-star level. I wouldn't think that it would be controversial to say. We'll see if he actually makes the team, but tonight was certainly a feather in his cap on a career afternoon in Charlotte.
Yeah. I mean, you made some good points. As far as, you talked about a team with 2 all-stars. A lot of times we see that number 1 seed will have 3 all-stars. So, I mean, I know
Yeah.
Darius Garland's name is going to definitely be in the mix as well. And it's amazing what they're doing because they didn't have any like huge offseason acquisitions. It was kind of the continuity story. And I think that can be underrated sometimes in the NBA. And especially with a team that has a younger core, like Donovan Mitchell's approaching his prime, Jared Allen is approaching his prime, but Evan Mobley and Darius Garland still have years to go to keep getting better. I mean, to me, the Cavs did the best thing by staying pat, and Kenny Atkinson's doing an amazing job. I mean, and I thought he was unfairly, fired in Brooklyn. I know Katie and Kyrie weren't really high on him, but he did a great job with that team, overachieved with that 2019 Nets team, and you're seeing a lot of great stuff for the Cavaliers. And, for fans like my age, in my mid-20s, all we know in terms of the Cavaliers being good is LeBron James with the Cavaliers.
Mhm.
Too young for the Mark Price days and all that. So to see this new chapter of Cleveland Cavaliers basketball and being successful is pretty nice. Just as a fan of a West Coast team with no dislike for the Cavaliers in any way.
Dime, if I told you at this time last night that tomorrow on Saturday, Nikola Jokic against the Wizards that have not won a game since October was going to put up 56 points, 16 rebounds, 8 assists, a steal, and shoot over 50% from the floor, nearly 60% from the floor, including 3 for 5 from 3. How much would you have projected the Nuggets to win by?
Oh man, 20 plus probably.
Correct. That's a fair assessment. They lost to the Washington Wizards 122-113. The Wizards' first win in over a month came at the hands of the Denver Nuggets. It feels like, as a West Coast baseball guy, you can appreciate this. It feels like those tweets that used to go around of like Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani did something that hasn't been done since the 1930s, and the Angels lost 7-5. Like, it feels like that's the story for Denver this season. Jokic is just phenomenal. He's on another level as he's been for years now, and yet they lose to Washington. Like, is this just a December night that we'll long forget about here in a couple of weeks, or is this kind of a bigger picture story for you?
I think the only reason why I'll say that it's a night that'll be forgotten, well, it won't be forgotten in the sense that Jokic had a career high and lost the game to a bad team. I think that's something that will always be something to laugh about. But they didn't have Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray, and I think that's worth noting. Started Russell Westbrook and Peyton Watson in their place. And this Denver Nuggets team, and everybody talked about it last year, and we saw it come back to bite in the playoffs against Minnesota. They lack depth. They lost Bruce Brown. They lost Jeff Green. They didn't do anything to replace them. And then this year you lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. While Christian Brown has stepped in and done an amazing job, you still had Christian Brown on the team last year. So essentially, Peyton Watson, I think he's done a great job stepping in defensively, but they're not as deep. So when you take out 2 starters, and I think part of the reason Denver's been in such trouble this season is this is not a very good defensive team. And when you take Aaron Gordon out of that rotation, and you talk about, the Cavaliers having backside protection, the Nuggets like to send Jokic out on the pick and rolls. He doesn't deter the rim at all. So having Aaron Gordon on that backside with MPJ, that's always been their formula. And not having Aaron Gordon, I think that's really massive. And also with the high lows that he runs with Jokic offensively. But no, Jamal Murray, even though he's been playing poorly, I think he's still so important to this team. But if we talk about bigger picture stuff, yeah, the Nuggets defense isn't very good, but you got to look at Jamal Murray and the disappointing season to me that he's having, and the disappointing last couple of months that he has really had, dating back to the Olympics, the series against the Timberwolves. I mean, he's not shooting well from the field, and we've seen the inconsistencies from Murray throughout the regular season, but he's dropped off this season. I mean, not even averaging 20 points, 18 points a game on 42% shooting and 33 from 3. And we know defensively he's not very good. I think that's the first thing you got to look at when he comes back. But in the context of this game, you're shorthanded, but 122 points to the Wizards. I mean, you let a lot of guys go off.
Yeah, I really do think that the injuries are worth talking about, but by the same token, your last point is still, 122 points to the Wizards, man. Like that's not great. The thing I think Denver long-term, like the only thing that is going to come up is their lack of depth and their need to find a way to patchwork it together, because clearly it's going to be very hard under the new CBA to do something massive at the trade deadline for what Denver is kind of locked into contractually. but they had to find a way to stagger lineups to where you're not playing these all bench lineups, because that's what's kind of sunk Denver in a lot of these games. And we'll see if that formula is out there for Mike Malone and company. But these losses can either really tear you apart or really galvanize you moving forward. So we'll see how they're going to respond to that in their next game.
I also wanted to point out, just looking at the box score, something that sticks out to me: 16 for 27 from the free throw line for the Nuggets. 11 missed free throws in a 9-point loss. Jokic missed 4 free throws. Russell Westbrook was 1 for 4 from the line. DeAndre Jordan 1 for 4 from the line. It feels like I'm looking at my Lob City Clips box score again, but that'll lose a game for you. And I just want to give Jordan Poole a shout out. 39 points. He had a pretty disappointing first season in Washington, but he's upped his scoring average again this year and feels like more like the Jordan Poole we were used to seeing with the Warriors.
Yeah, he certainly feels back on track. A big win for the Wizards. You don't want to see that losing streak spiral anymore. And of course, it took an all-around effort from a lot of their young guys to get this win over Denver. But coming up, we still have the best game of the day, Memphis and Boston, along with some concerns about the Knicks defense, and the Suns, Mavericks, and Thunder all were able to play in this weekend as well. We'll talk about all that coming up. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at Robinhood Gold, go check them out today, because with Robinhood Gold, you do not need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows you to have the rates and the perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% interest boost on an IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides you with the privileges of the high net worth at any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up today at robinhood.com/gold. Terms and conditions apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. We're back on Locked On NBA Game Nights. Dime Dropper, host of Locked On Clippers there. I'm Roland Styles, Locked On Thunder host here. And let's go to the biggest game of the day, where the Memphis Grizzlies got a win in Boston.
There was a basketball game in Boston for the Celtics tonight, and the Jays went off. Don't get it twisted, but it was probably not the Jays that Celtics fans were anticipating. I'm Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies, and it was Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies that played the best basketball in this particular contest. No, it wasn't the best comeback for Marcus Smart, his first time playing on the court there in Boston since the trade. But even though he had a tough night shooting, his teammates picked him up. The stars shined. Ja Morant throughout the contest. Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. Desmond Bane getting hot late. You had massive contributions from players like Brandon Clark. It wasn't just the big three for the Grizzlies, but this was a big win for Memphis. Make no mistake, the reigning defending NBA champions. You go into their house on a Saturday night, you pick up a big victory. Who is saying the Grizzlies aren't for real now? Certainly not.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think that this was a statement win for the Memphis Grizzlies, because they've been in and out, of course, of the playoff picture due to injuries these last couple of years. And you know what they're capable of, but it always felt this season, watching them go through and now rise up the Western Conference standings in that home court advantage range and really gunning for the 2 seed, gunning for the 1 seed if all breaks their way. Like it feels now like at first you were waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it feels like that shoe's not coming, because this team is so deep. They've hit on so many marginal guys, not as an insult, but marginal guys in the sense of how you acquired them, hitting on them and developing them. Plus, you still have a massive top three with Jaren Jackson Jr., and you have Desmond Bane as well, who got hot at the end of this game, as Joe said. I think that this was a massive win for Memphis.
Huge win. Anytime any team can beat the defending champions is a big deal, especially with their starting lineup intact with Porzingis. I know they missed Al Horford, but beating the Celtics in Boston with all 5 of those guys, that's a huge win. And, you know, to piggyback off what you and Joe were saying, the Grizzlies, they were another team that was a little bit slept on coming into the season because of what you said, the injuries last year. But this is a team that finished with the second best record in the West for 2 consecutive seasons. They're getting all these guys back. And I think one thing people underestimated was their depth because they didn't have Tyus Jones anymore. And you had the Gigi Jackson and the Vince Williams that haven't really been available like that so far this year. Vince Williams only played 3 games, haven't had Gigi Jackson for any. But these guys like Jalen Wells and Scottie Pippen Jr. and Jay Huff and Jake LaRavia, they've been so impressive to me. And then you have Brandon Clark, who's back, who I've always been pretty high on. And, with Edie out, he started. And even when Edie was playing, averaging double figures, this team has 7 guys averaging double-figure points. So the Grizzlies are back, and they're definitely a team to watch. And this is a huge win. And again, as far as the Celtics side of things, same thing as the Nuggets for me, Rylan. Looking at the box score, 19 for 28 from the free throw line. And the Celtics just shot poorly all the way around. 40% from the field, 30% from 3, and 68% from the line. And they still scored 121 points, but it wasn't their night.
I liked how physical Memphis was defensively. I mean, whenever you can force Jason Tatum to go 6 for 21 from the floor, you've done your job. Jaylen Brown did shake loose. I mean, he only missed 4 shots all night, including 1 from beyond the arc. So Jaylen Brown was awesome. Porzingis had a lesser night in terms of efficiency. He also did leave this game briefly with a bit of an injury, so it kind of feels too tough to judge on this one game. But Boston, I think, could have stood to put Tatum back in the game earlier and Brown back in the game earlier down the stretch of this game because they're staring down the barrel of 4 straight off days. But on the same token, you're on the second night of a back-to-back. So I get the cat and mouse game there from Missoula. But the Memphis Grizzlies are the deepest team in the NBA. And there's some debate. Obviously, you can go with the Thunder or other teams. But, I mean, top to bottom, you mentioned the guys that are still out. That's not even counting the guys that did play, of course, who all played well. Like, there was not a single person out there who, whenever they were out there, I was like, man, you really can't have their minutes. And that includes a -10 from Marcus Smart, who we all know is a really good defender. And it's not as though you don't want to play him. He just was not his night, as Joe said. 1 for 11 from the floor, 1 for 6 from 3. He just didn't have a good shooting night, but he still was a quality defender out there. But this team is just unbelievably deep. They've withstood injuries to this point. And if they can be a team that if they get healthy and if they get clicking, which they are clicking right now, but if they get healthy at the end of the season, they can go on not a miracle run because they're so talented, but they can go on a run where everything breaks their way and they get through a really tough Western Conference. Like this Western Conference, I think is pretty fun to kind of think about who all could break through.
Yeah, it's very open. I think your Thunder team is the favorite. I think that's been the consensus for most people before the season, and they still haven't been healthy. But yeah, the Grizzlies are really back. Like they have a squad and a lot of contributors, and it's good to see Ja Morant playing basketball again. He's so exciting to watch, and this is with Desmond Bane, kind of starting this season not shooting too great. I know he missed some games, but he's shooting 32% from the field, and if that 3 ball starts, returning to what we're used to seeing. I mean, this is a team that's 5th in offensive rating and 6th in defensive rating right now. So a team that's in the top 10 in both categories usually always will be a good team. And they've proven to be such a good regular season team in the past. So, yeah, I mean, as a Western Conference fan, we got to definitely watch out for them for sure.
Yeah, I think once the Thunder get fully healthy, they could take that mantle as the deepest team. But for right now, I think it is Memphis. But OKC, of course, still deep, even with the injuries that they're dealing with. We're going to get to them in a little bit. But first, what's not back is Tom Thibodeau's defense. 120 points given up to the Detroit Pistons in a loss to the Pistons for New York. The Pistons got an 11-point night from Tim Hardaway Jr., 13 points from Tobias Harris. Jalen Duren had 12. Cade Cunningham had 29. Jaden Ivey had 16. That's double figures all across their starting 5. And then off the bench, Malik Beasley had 23 off the pine for Detroit. You've seen this kind of play out so far this season where it's kind of been a role reversal for a Thibodeau team where the Knicks have been one of the most fun offenses to watch and one of the most puzzling defenses to watch because in theory they should be a good defensive team, not just because of their coach, but because you have guys like OG, you have guys like Josh Hart, you have guys like Michael Bridges. Like you should be, and Precious Achiuwa, you should be a good defensive team. They just haven't put it together yet. Do you still believe that they can put it together in the second half of this season? We'll be looking back and saying, remember when the Knicks couldn't play defense?
Honestly, no. I think they're 17th in the defensive rating right now. I just checked, and I don't see them being in the top 10. I think they're going to hover around anywhere between 12 to 20 all year because you replace Karl-Anthony Towns. You replace Isaiah Hartenstein with Karl-Anthony Towns, but you're actually not just replacing Isaiah Hartenstein because so far this season, Mitchell Robinson's been out, and he's a great rim protector. So you're now putting Karl Anthony Towns in that starting center spot. You know what you're getting there, a huge offensive upgrade, but you're also getting a huge defensive downgrade. And as amazing as Cat's been this season, and I know he didn't play in this game, which, by the way, that means that you're getting Precious Achiuwa, Jericho Sims, and Ariel Hukporti minutes. And again, I'm not saying these are bad players or anything, but is it, compared to what other teams have in the NBA as their bigs, including the Knicks when Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson are whole, it's definitely a big downgrade. And then, so their rim protection isn't very good. They don't have much depth at the big spot. And then they don't have much depth, period. Tom Thibodeau does not trust this team. Like, he doesn't trust this roster more than like 7 or 8 guys. And I think that's a problem as well. And then you talked about all the wing guys they have. One thing I've noticed, and I've been paying a lot of attention to the Knicks, is, and the Nets fans warned Knicks fans about this, Mikal Bridges hasn't been that elite defender that we saw in Phoenix. He's been decent, but just decent is not necessarily worth, to me, his contract. And I'm not saying he's overpaid or anything like that, but he needs to be better on that end of the floor, especially with the offensive options the Knicks have. And when Karl Anthony Towns is back, of course, like they're going to need more from him defensively. And then I also think that Tom Thibodeau, when they play Karl Anthony Towns in drop coverage, I don't really understand that because he's not really deterring shots at the rim. I don't know what it is about him, but I think sending 2 at the ball and having Hart, Bridges, and OG on the back line might be a better option. Just have them fly around and stuff. I know you're putting 2 on the ball and that gives up open threes, but that's something I've noticed all season that I think if I were Tom Thibodeau, I would rather have Cat come out and have OG and them rotate on the backside because they're quick. They have good anticipation. But to me, because they're going to put Jalen Brunson in the pick and roll. Like people don't talk about, and I love Brunson, but he's not a good defender at all. And that's something that's very noticeable watching the games.
Yeah, the Knicks have to figure it out and put together some complimentary basketball, but the Heat got a statement win over the Suns. You had the Mavericks taking care of business as well as the Thunder. We'll talk about all that to wrap up the show coming up. But first, I want to say right now, but our good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. FanDuel, America's sportsbook, gives you everything you need to live bet on the NFL all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of a game, or you just want to check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and kind of predict what's going to happen in the future, you can do that at FanDuel.com. And perhaps the NFL Sunday today does not intrigue you, but if you're only an NBA fan, you can still place a bet on the NBA, including the Sixers going to Chicago, where the Sixers are 1-point favorites on the road in Chicago on FanDuel. Go check them out today. We're back on Locked On NBA Game Nights. Dime Dropper, host of Locked On Clippers, joining me today. Roland Styles, host of Locked On Thunder. Dime, the Heat got to win over the Suns. And I know the Suns didn't have Kevin Durant, but still you would imagine that a team that got the Grayson Allen game that you've wanted from him, 5 for 9 from 3, 16 points total, 4 assists, 2 boards, 2 steals, that a team with that kind of performance from Allen, plus you have Tyus Jones, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, would still be able to take care of a rather messy Heat team that's had an inconsistent season, but it was not enough at all. The Heat get a 10-point win, as you saw Jimmy Butler go for 24, Bam go for a 25-point double-double. Duncan Robinson had 19 points. Tyler Hero had 17 points. What do you make of both these teams? Like, if I told you had to predict how each season finishes, where are you at on the Suns and Heat?
Heat, I think they're going to be slightly above 500. I think a lot of it comes down to like how hard Jimmy Butler goes in the regular season for me. He really somewhat devalued the regular season and didn't take it quite seriously. And I've heard Heat fans echo those sentiments last year. So I don't know. I don't expect too much from Miami in the regular season. I think there'll be a couple games over 500. It's good to see Bam start having some big games after the slower start to the season. But the Suns, I mean, you say you would expect them to do better without KD, but they're literally 1-8 after this game without KD. A team that doesn't have too much like front court size. KD does so much for them defensively, which is an underrated part of, his game, being that mobile and being that versatile and being able to switch, but also on the backside. And they don't have good rim protection like Nurkic or Plumlee. I had Mason Plumlee on my team the last couple of years. He does not deter the rim. You want to talk about Karl Anthony Towns not deterring the rim? He doesn't at all. So the Suns, I mean, I don't know what to make of them. I think they're better with the addition of Tyus Jones, but like this isn't a good defensive team. They're 21st in the league in defensive rating, and you look at their roster. There's one person in that starting lineup tonight that I would say is a good defender, Royce O'Neal. I know Bradley Beal last year stepped it up defensively at the point of attack, but if Bradley Beal is a top 2 point of attack defender on your team, because Josh Okogie, he doesn't consistently get minutes because of his lack of offense.
Mm-hmm.
I just think, if Grayson Allen or Bradley Beal are your second best point of attack defenders, then your team is like, I don't know. You're not going to be a good defense, that's for sure. And then without KD, it's going to be hard. And Miami, Phoenix without KD, you told me Miami wins by 10, I would be like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I guess that's where it is for the Phoenix Suns. Of you're 1-8 without KD, but you're going to have to win at some point. Like if KD is going to keep being in and out of the lineup without Kevin, and of all the teams, like this messy Heat team in an environment that is really sleepy in Miami, a late arriving crowd if they ever show up, these are kind of the ones you need to bank, and they could not bank it. But Don, let's head on up north of the border to Toronto, where the Mavs took care of business.
3, 2. Well, it shouldn't have came down to it, but the Mavs get another clutch win against the Toronto Raptors. After going up by 24 points in the third quarter, the Raptors went on an 11-0 run at the end of the third to make it a 13-point game, then eventually cut it down to 5, and the Mavs got some clutch plays by Kyrie Irving, Derek Lively, and others to finish off this game and get a win. It could have been less than 5 at one point. The Mavs got a challenge correct. They don't get many challenges correct, so we'll take the win on that one. Derek Lively, a great block on Jakob Poeltl, an incredible block and defensive play by Derek Lively. The Mavs have found an incredible defender in him. He's been awesome. And the story of this one at the beginning was the Mavs were shooting really well from 3. You got 6 threes from Luka, 6 threes from Kyrie. Kyrie started the game 5 of 5, super hot in this one. He finished with 29. Luka got 30 points, 13 boards, and 11 assists, another triple-double for him. And you got a good Klay Thompson game, 20 points, hit 3 threes, hit 5 other 2s. Really great game from him in the aggregate. And then you got a couple of contributions from some other guys, Gafford and Dinwiddie, with double digits off the bench. A good win for the Mavericks, even though they took their foot off the gas.
Look, it's a good win because any win in the NBA is a good win, and you'll take the wins, an ugly win over a pretty loss any day. The Mavericks made it closer than they had to be. Shout out to Jason Kidd, one of the worst challengers of all time, got one against Toronto. I don't really have too much of a concern about Dallas letting go of the rope because Toronto is a frisky team despite their record. Like, they have the pieces to make games interesting. I think that they're a really well-coached team to make things interesting. And the Mavericks still were able to put their foot back on the pedal, get the car back on the road, and get a win. So overall, I'd consider this a successful game for Dallas, even though the scoreboard might not have been as lopsided as you wanted it to be.
Yeah, Dallas is like the hottest team in the league right now. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins in a row. They're hitting their stride, and they were playing really solid without Luka too. And I got to give Kyrie Irving a lot of credit for that. And Spencer Dinwiddie had some big games during that stretch. But now that Luka's back, seems like they haven't missed a beat, picking up winning ways and scoring a lot of points. The last 4 games, they've had 120 plus points in every single one. And Nick talked about it there. Kyrie Irving started out hot. I was able to catch some of that first half. And I mean, he was very hot. So
30-point triple-double for Luka. Kyrie was in control offensively. Got a good Klay Thompson game. That's the recipe for the 7 straight win Mavs. I cannot wait for Tuesday night inside the Paycom Center where the Thunder and Mavs do battle again in an elimination game. But before that, the Mavericks took care of business against the New Orleans Pelicans, who refused to quit in this game despite the score.
Pelicans lose 119-109 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. There's 2 stories here. The first is, look, the Pelicans had a furious comeback, made this one kind of close, but they were down 30 against the OKC Thunder. And while OKC is really good, this was a mostly healthy Pelicans team. They had Brandon Ingram for a moment, more on that in a second here. DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and they just looked terrible. They looked like they didn't want to play in this. OKC's really good, but 30 at home is a lot, and you've got to see better effort, better preparation overall from this team. But that was all overshadowed by Brandon Ingram going down with what looked like a pretty scary left ankle injury. Couldn't put any weight on it as he was carried off of the court. Now we kind of wait to see. The Pelicans got healthy for exactly 1.5 games before another potentially major injury crept up. We're just going to wait to hear now for updates on Brandon Ingram. We'll have him over at the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
Yeah, that was the very first play out of halftime where he lands on Lou Dort. Got the offensive foul and the injury all in one play. Brandon Ingram, before that, did not look good. Before that, the Pelicans, like Jake mentioned, they just looked checked out. They didn't have any sort of intensity or effort, and they were basically just handing the ball to the Thunder as early Christmas gifts that allowed them to swell a 30-point lead. But after BI goes out, a couple plays later, Willie Green gets a technical foul, and that technical foul really spurred the Pelicans to get re-energized. They cut it down to 9 points at one point from 30. The Thunder eventually did stretch it back out, get a double-digit win against New Orleans. I think that it depends what prism you look at this game through. For the Pelicans, this has been a season that you cannot wait to forget. And so the fact that they didn't just roll over down 30 and get curb stomped as the Jazz and the Raptors did earlier this week to Oklahoma City is impressive. The fact you ever got down 30 in the first place at home, as Jake said, is not. And for the Thunder, look, it's hard to control a game for all 48 minutes. And the fact that you were able to withstand such a massive run from the Pelicans, never lose the lead, get down 9, and get right back up on the horse and win by 10, I think is impressive for OKC, who's been a consistently great team this season. The Thunder get another win. Dime.
Yeah, I think I can say more about the Thunder, but I just want to say that even as a Clipper fan, who I think we were the most injured franchise in the history of the game, I've never seen a season quite like this. I think Memphis last year was insane, the amount of injuries they had, but my goodness, I don't know what's going on over there in New Orleans, but I just feel sorry for the fans. Brandon Ingram, Zion, they're always injured. It's good to see Herb Jones back out on the court and DeJounte Murray as well, but Pelicans, as you said, can't wait for the season to be over. I can't wait to forget it. 5-19. This is a team that was before the season, people consider them right in the mix with these other teams that are trying to make the play-in and the playoffs. And I don't know. I don't know what the future of this team looks like, but I just want to give a shout out to my man, Isaiah Hartenstein. Love that guy. Double machine. For you, as someone that watches this team every single game, how has it been having an actual big man to relieve Chet, whether he's there or not? That is the reason, to me, the main reason that you didn't beat the Dallas Mavericks last year. And now you have one of the best backup big, if not the best backup big in the league. And yeah, do you think you're going to start him, by the way, when Chet comes back? Going to keep him off the bench and keep the same starting lineup?
Yeah, I could see it going either way. I think that if you do start Hartenstein with Chet, it would be similar to how the Rockets started Chris Paul and James Harden. They both started, but you quickly get one off the floor. That way you can cover the whole 48 minutes with a true center. And the thing about Hartenstein that I think is the most encouraging is that he is everything the Thunder focus on of being versatile on both ends, being able to play with the ball in your hand, being live on offense. He does all that, only he does have that beefy frame you were looking for. And so I think that that's why you saw OKC. Yes, at the trade deadline last year, everyone knew that the problem was size. There wasn't a Hartenstein available at the trade deadline that you could get size and also fit your system. He's one of the only guys in the league that does that. So they were really banking on being able to lure him away in free agency. And then they went and did it in free agency. That's the biggest thing, is that his ability to play with the ball in his hands, create advantages as a playmaker offensively, and then defensively, he can protect the rim. He can even switch a little bit on the defensive end on the outside, which he doesn't have to a ton because of how good the Thunder are on the perimeter. And then cleaning up the glass. The fact that he's gotten the Thunder, even without Chet right now, to be, break even on the glass is really the only center that's available because Jay Will is also out, is impressive whenever you couple it with how historic the Thunder are at creating turnovers. The Thunder have have created more steals than they themselves have turned the ball over at this point in the season. That creates fast break points. That creates the ability to get up by 30 points. And once you get up by 30 points, even the furious runs from the Pelicans was only they would have these massive runs, and it just felt awful for the Thunder's offense that was stalling. And the run at the end of it, the timeout, only got them back to within 14, and then got them back within 10. And then they did dip it into 9, and then it was back up to 10. It was just a cushion that you could not give away. And that was in large part due to Hartenstein, who, on top of all that we've already said, his screen setting is something that the Thunder have not had since Steven Adams, and it's better than Steven Adams. He's the best screen setter that the Thunder have ever had because of what you can do off of it. Like Steven Adams could only really roll to the rim. And even then, he was really good at cleaning that up. But Hartenstein can roll to the rim. He's a better lob threat, I think, than Steven Adams was. And he can also pop out. And of course, not going to shoot a ton except for in the mid-range floater. But his popping out is to pass it to the next cutter, to pass it to the open guy after the defense shifts on the screening action. So it's just been a whirlwind for what he's brought to the table for Oklahoma City. It's why they're the best in the West still, even with Chet Holmgren out for a large chunk of this regular season. But Dime, this has been fun. This has been a fun day, fun pod of NBA action. Go check him out at Locked On Clippers. You can check me out at Locked On Thunder. And until next time on Locked On NBA Game Nights, be good and be good to one another.